The Battleship Wisconsin is one of the last battleships built by the U.S. Navy. She was launched on the second anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor. Whiskey, as sailors called her, served in the Pacific Fleet during World War II. During peacetime, she was used as a training ship until called back into service during the Korean War. In 1958, the Wisconsin joined the Mothball Fleet when she was taken out of commission, and that's where she stayed waiting to be called upon. In 1981, President Reagan did just that when things began heating up in the Persian Gulf. Keith Nitka served as a quartermaster on board during Operation Desert Shield. Hey, Keith.
Hey, Chris.
How are you?
Good.
Got time for a few questions?
I certainly do.
All right. Tell me a little bit about your first memory being here on the Wisconsin.
So my first memory of coming to the Wisconsin is just the size of the ship. As I'm walking down the pier, and I'm looking at the ship, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to be one of the navigators who's responsible to safely navigate this thing around the world.
And when you got here, were you under the impression that you were going into Operation Desert Shield over in the Persian Gulf, or was that?
No, when I got here, none of that had happened yet. I knew we were going to go on a Mediterranean cruise, so I was looking forward to that because I had not been to the Mediterranean. It wasn't until we were supposed to leave for the Mediterranean cruise that's when the invasion started there in Kuwait, and we knew we were going in that general direction, but didn't know for sure.
And did anything stick out in your mind in particular about your time over there, and whether it was while you were there or on your way there?
So there were the hostilities that were going on, and I, as a lot of the sailors here, had an idea that we were going to have to get involved in some way, shape, or form, and it was a little nerve-wracking, a little unsettling to think that we were actually going to go to possibly war, but with so much to get done, there really wasn't a lot of time to think and reflect on that.
And being that busy, was there any time for like sightseeing on your way there? Did you get to see anything like breathtaking or something that you put in that memory bank for a lifetime?
So got to the Rock of Gibraltar. I saw it through a pair of binoculars, but that was pretty much it.
And why did you decide to enlist in the Navy?
Well, it's actually a funny story, Chris, because I had no intention of joining the Navy when I went to the recruiting station. So I went to the recruiting station to talk to the Air Force recruiter, and when I got there, the Air Force recruiter, there was a sign on the door that said, "Be back in 15 minutes." So I was sitting in the hallway outside of the Air Force recruiter's door, and the man who would be my Navy recruiter came out into the hallway and asked me what I was doing, and I explained to him that I was waiting on the Air Force recruiter, and he turned around and walked away. A few minutes later, he came back and he said, "You're still here?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "You want a Coke?" I said, "No, thanks." And he went back into his office. About 15 minutes after that, he came back out and said, "I can't believe you're still here. Why don't you come in here and sit down, because the chairs that I have in the recruiting office are much more comfortable than the chairs out there." So I took him up on his offer, and I sat down, and then 30 minutes later, I was in the Navy.
And was that something that you and your friends did, or was that something you did by yourself?
So I initially went to the recruiting station with 4 other friends. They all went into the Marine Corps, and they had actually taken care of everything and left me there because I was still waiting on the Air Force recruiter. And to this day, I still have yet to see that Air Force recruiter.
And back to the Wisconsin. When did she officially become decommissioned and become what she is today?
She was decommissioned last in September of 1991, and in 2000 is when she was moved here to her berth at Nauticus. And then in 2009 is when she was opened up the inside of the ship for tours.
The Wisconsin is an Iowa-class battleship that is well known for its heavy armor. The navigation bridge here on level 4, one of the safest places to be during an attack. I mean, look at the thickness on this wall. So, Keith, is this where you worked when you were stationed on the ship?
It's one of the spaces, yes.
Yeah, notice we're pretty close to those big 16-inch guns. Were there any issues with the concussion when they went off?
Well, we had to roll down the windows prior to firing the guns, because if we did not roll down those windows, they would break.
You had to roll down all the windows on this level.
Yes, so all 32 windows had to be rolled down before firing the guns. Luckily, when we were in the Persian Gulf, we always knew we were going to the firing line, so we rolled down the windows prior to going there. Now, having said that, we did lose the chart table where I worked, and we did lose the light above the chart table where I worked because the welds broke and all that fell apart.
But not during your watch.
Not on my watch, no.
So, what is this place that we're standing in right now?
So what we're standing in is what we lovingly call up here the Citadel. And it's a fortress that encapsulates the steering and the, in layman's terms, the gas pedal. So the helm and the lee helm.
So this is the driver's seat.
This is the driver's seat, yes, sir.
Just in my brief time on this ship, I've noticed that there are a lot of ladders that go from level to level and deck to deck. Seems like after a while that'd be a pretty good workout. Is that something you did to keep in shape on the ship, or did you have your own specific routine?
I didn't have a routine, so to speak, just with the amount of walking that I had to do up and down ladders to get from my berthing to eating and my berthing to where I worked. Just all that walking kept me pretty much in shape.